Thanks for joining us on the Fishing Magazine television series. This week, we take you back to Grand Lake of the Cherokees, this time for the Grand Lake Pro-Am Bass Tournament. It's the final event on Central Pro-Am's 2001 tournament schedule, and it's the tournament that will decide the top 30 pros and top 30 amateurs who qualify for the Ranger Mercury Pro-Am Championship. We'll be right back right after these messages.
Job was to make a summertime bass tournament as tough as possible for the competitors. You might begin by scheduling it during a full moon. Then, just for good measure, you might throw in surface water temperatures above 90 degrees. Combine those with fluctuating lake levels, and you'd have it. The toughest conditions imaginable. Well, those are exactly the difficulties facing some of Mid-America's best anglers as they gather at Oklahoma's Grand Lake of the Cherokees for the last stop on Central Pro-Am Association's 2001 Tournament Trail. More than 220 anglers from 7 states are on hand for this early August event, and those most familiar with Grand Lake, including 1996 Grand Pro-Am winner Alan Head, believe this tournament could be tough, with a capital T.
I really haven't had that good a practice. I think we're right in the middle of a full moon right now that's going to cause us some problems. I've talked to a few of the guys that have fished a lot of night here lately, and I think the fish are biting pretty good of a night, so it's going to make the daytime bite a little bit tougher. But I'm going to fish a lot of boathouses, and I'm going to fish some brush piles and some ledges, and just hope that I can come up with enough bites.
Another who expects conditions to be tough for the Pro-Am anglers is 1999 Grand Lake Pro-Am winner Danny Barnes.
I think it's going to be pretty tough. The fishing in the lake's been up and down. Down last weekend, it's back up a little bit this weekend. There's about 4 patterns going on, and I think the guys that are throwing deeper crankbaits are going to have a good shot at this tournament. And right now, the pattern I'm on, I'm flipping boat docks and brush piles. It's just going to be kind of a matter of who gets on some bigger fish.
The Grand Lake Pro-Am marks the final event for the Central Pro-Am tournament season and the quest for berths in the $145,000 Ranger Mercury Pro-Am Championship. It'll also determine the winner of the Mercury Outboard Ulrich Marine Center Angler of the Year titles in both divisions. After the first 5 tournaments, Troy Aikens stands atop the Pro Division standings with 543 points. Close behind is his father, Jim Aikens, who's only 7 points back at 536. Gary Carrier and Jackie Davis are running neck and neck in 3rd and 4th place with 476 and 468 respectively, while Toby Hartzell rounds out the top 5 with 439. In the rest of the top 10, Chuck Krim leads the way in 6th place with 425 points, followed by Jimmy Davis, Jerry Weisinger, Tim Taylor, and Joe Bennett. In the amateur division, the leader going into this final event is Bob Jorgensen with 394 points. Next comes a trio of capable anglers in a virtual dead heat. Steve Meintz is in 2nd place with 363 points, but he has only the narrowest of leads over Larry Stevie and Pro-Am rookie David Boer, while Jerry Hickey is not far behind with 349. In the rest of the top 10, defending Angler of the Year Steve Plank holds down 6th place with 342 points, followed by Kyle Triplett, Mason Chambers, Jim Kaywood, and J.R. Isom. The morning of day 1 dawns clear and bright, and the Pro-Am anglers are eager to be on the water, even though they know that clear and bright is certain to turn into hot and humid by the afternoon. In the history of Central Pro-Am, there's not another angler like Jim Aikens. He's qualified for every Pro-Am championship ever held, and along the way, he's also won 3 Central Pro-Am titles and been Angler of the Year in 1996. This year, Aikens has already clinched a berth in the Ranger Mercury Pro-Am Championship, but the 57-year-old angler would love to go there again as the Angler of the Year. He's in good position to do just that, but he's going to need 2 solid limits. So far this morning, he's catching lots of fish, but they'll need to be bigger than these in order for him to overtake his son Troy for Angler of the Year. When it comes to catching bass in the summer on Grand Lake, Oklahoman Wayne Diffie is one of the best. He's been fishing the lake most of his life, and he likes it best in July and August when others are complaining about the sweltering heat. Today, he's fishing Main Lake flats and working deep diving crankbaits around brush piles and along drop-offs. It doesn't take long for Diffie and amateur partner Billy Bird to get rolling. But one thing is certain about Grand Lake. There's no shortage of fish to be caught on open water patterns in the summer. Many of the ones they're catching simply won't count, but many of them will, and those odds suit Diffie just fine. Darrell Robertson gained national prominence in 1999 when he won the FLW Tour Championship and the Ranger Millennium Tournament back-to-back. But he's been known as one of the best around Grand Lake for years. So far, he hasn't gotten many bites, but the 3 bass he's caught are good ones. The same is true for amateur partner Thomas Johnston. The 68-year-old amateur already has 2 keepers today, and if he can keep this up, he's certain to be among the Day 1 leaders. Another master of Grand Lake brush piles is Alan Head. When Head won the Grand Pro-Am in 1996, over a field that included 6 Bassmasters Classic qualifiers, he set an all-time Central Pro-Am tournament record of over 45 pounds. He's not on pace like that today, but he and amateur partner Mike Purse are well on their way to limits. And if they can keep this up, they both seem certain to be among the Day 1 leaders. Jason Christie is another Oklahoma angler who's a threat to win any Central Pro-Am tournament held in the Sooner State. Christie won the Eufaula Pro-Am in 2000 and came close to pulling off another victory at the Pro-Am Championship on Fort Gibson that same year. Today, the 27-year-old schoolteacher already has 3 keepers fishing a deep diving crankbait around open water structure. And now, he's got 4, and 1 more could put him in the running for sure. Another teacher who's learned his lessons on fishing Grand Lake is Gary Carrier. Carrier came in second at Grand Lake in 2000, falling less than an ounce short of victory. So expectations are running high that he can repeat his performance. Carrier is having the best year of his angling career so far. He already won at Lake of the Ozarks, and he's been in contention in every Central Pro-Am event held this year. So far, Grand Lake appears to be no exception. And if he and amateur partner Jack Taft III can keep this up, they're both putting themselves in position to go home with the brass ring. When the Pro-Am anglers return to Martin's Landing for the afternoon weigh-in, Jim Kaywood establishes the early amateur division standard with 10.5 pounds. A short time later, Mike Purse also comes in with a limit and surpasses Kaywood with 12.3 pounds. Next is Thomas Johnston.
Ooh, how many you got to go with it?
I only got 3. I had 3 bites. Darrell said I could have half as many bites as he had. He had 6 and I had 3.
I don't know. Doggone table chair's getting ready. Look here what he did. 11.25 pounds. And that's going to be second place in the amateur division. Good job.
When the 3rd flight arrives, Jack Taft comes to the scales.
Oh, my goodness. Look here. I think it's going to be a new leader there. Yep. 14.05 pounds. That's a new leader in the amateur division.
In the pro division, Jason Christie is one of the first to weigh in. He comes in with a solid limit and jumps into the lead with 13.35 pounds. Then, Alan Head moves to the front of the pack with a limit that weighs 15.55 pounds. Then, it's Brian Snowden.
Look at here, this limit. Look at here. Going to take the lead away, I believe. Going to do it, I think. We'll give him a little traveling money. Let me see. Oh, no, we're not. 16.70 pounds. A new leader in the pro division, Brian Snowden.
Gary Carrier also has a solid limit, and it leapfrogs him into second place with 16.35 pounds. Then, Steve Wright comes to the scales.
Oh, look at that sack of fish. There's 4 bass. And a 5-pounder in there. Watch out. 15.20 pounds. Put your hands together, Steve Wright. Good job, buddy.
Finally, Wayne Diffie steps to the scales.
Leading the tournament right now is your one of your high competitors on this lake. Who is that, Mr. Head leading this thing? No. Who is? Brian took the lead away from him. Ryan did, and Alan's second, and I think Darrell's third, and you're about 4th right now is where you're at. That's exactly where you want to be, isn't it?
Just right.
Just perfect. 14.25 pounds. Mark it.
At the end of the first day, Brian Snowden sits atop the Lunker Lure Pro-Am scoreboard with 16.7 pounds. Gary Carrier is only ounces behind in second place with 16.35 pounds, followed by fellow Oklahomans Steve Wright, Alan Head, and Darrell Robertson. In the rest of the top 10, it's even more Sooners on parade as Wayne Diffie leads the way in sixth place with 14.25 pounds, followed by Toby Hartzell, Jason Christie, Eric Holt, and Butch Still. In the amateur division, Jack Taft holds the day one lead with 13.8 pounds. Mike Purse holds down second place with 12.3 pounds, followed by Thomas Johnston, Jim Kaywood, and Clark Bolden. In the rest of the top 10, Lyle Vale leads the way in sixth place with 8.25 pounds, but he has only a narrow lead over Kim Huey, Keith Sedberry, Gary Barnes, and Brandon Christian. Stay tuned for exciting Day 2 action. We'll be right back. Central Pro-Am's top competitors. In 2000, Bill Reed won the Grand Lake Pro-Am by going against conventional tournament wisdom and fishing the lower end of Grand Lake in the afternoon, when the big boats are out in force stirring up the water. Needless to say, he brought home the $12,000 first prize because he had the courage to fish his way.
I knew it was going to be an all-day process, and yesterday I caught fish late in the day, and today I was really fired up that I had a late draw. It didn't bother me a bit. I wanted that afternoon bite because I knew that if the wave activity got up and the sun got up and put some shade on those docks, that would position those fish where they needed to be. But it was a late bite as far as the jig goes. I had to wait them out. I had to wait for the sun to get up, and then a lot of the boat traffic. I was fighting waves. I almost fell out of the boat yesterday. But that's where the fish were hanging to those right under the foam, just waiting to ambush a shad or any kind of bait fish that was going to blow by that shaded spot on the dock.
The morning of Day 2 dawns about like Day 1, which suits many of the Pro-Am anglers just fine. But with a mere 3 pounds separating the top 10 Pro Division anglers, they all know that every fish will be critical today. First day leader Brian Snowden and amateur partner Steve Mitchell start the day fishing deep diving crankbaits on the main lake flat in front of Terra Miranda. Snowden caught most of his fish on Day 1, fishing a white jig around boat docks in the Elk River. But he's out in the second flight this morning and has chosen to fish the Terra Miranda area early before it gets worked over by other competitors. Then he'll head to his Elk River spots where competition for water is less keen. Steve Wright is out with the third flight and has returned to the area that produced his 4 hefty keepers on Day 1. Unfortunately, his bass are nowhere in evidence this morning. Wright knows he could go looking for other areas, but he has confidence in his ability to get his fish to bite on a Carolina rig. So he's reluctant to chase after a bird in the bush, so to speak. Instead, he's determined to work his area thoroughly and wait for them to turn on later in the day. Now, you've no doubt heard the expression, "in the fish." Whoever originated it obviously wasn't a tournament bass fisherman, because today, Wayne Diffie is definitely in the fish, and he's getting a little tired of it. So far this morning, Diffie and amateur partner Bruce Simmons are catching fish after fish. The problem is that the bass Diffie is located are mixed with a large school of white bass. And guess which ones are hitting his crankbait first? At first, the aggressive white bass didn't irritate Diffie. But by mid-morning, he's yet to land a keeper bass, and he knows that time is slipping away. Finally, Diffie lands the bass he's been waiting for, and he knows that if others are having as much trouble catching bass as he is, this tournament could go right down to the wire. Gary Carrier started the day in second place, less than half a pound behind leader Brian Snowden. But so far, that's not doing him much good. Like Diffie, he's having trouble getting bites, and by late morning, he's getting concerned. And unless he can figure out something quickly, he could be in for a very long afternoon. When the Pro-Am anglers return to Martin's Landing for the final weigh-in, first day leader Jack Taft, the third, is one of the first to come to the scales.
He's got 2 bass today that weigh 5.05 pounds. Hold on here just a second here. I guarantee it's going to be tough to get him. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen, 18.85 pounds. A new leader in the amateur division, Jack Taft III.
Kyle Triplett comes in with this magnificent 5-pounder, but he has only 2 fish and can't overtake Taft. Neither can Larry Stevie, but even though his catch is not good enough to put him in contention, it is good enough to earn him the Amateur Division Angler of the Year title. Finally, it all comes down to Mike Purse.
Oh, buddy, 1 bass, 1 point. You already won one, though, haven't you?
Yeah, I won the table rock division last year.
Couple of big bass awards.
Yes.
So you're not going to be too disappointed that somebody else wins one.
No, I'm just happy to make the championship.
All right, Mike Purse, 1.75 pounds today.
In the Pro Division, John Kramer comes in with a limit and takes the early lead with 18.5 pounds. But he's soon overtaken by Toby Hartzell with 24.45 pounds. A short time later, Troy Akins comes in with a limit that weighs 10.85 pounds. It's not enough to take the lead, but it is enough to earn him his 2nd Angler of the Year title. A short time later, Gary Carrier comes to the scales.
The fireworks are about to start right now. How many you got?
4.
Oh, he needed that 5th fish bad. Needed it. He had 16.35 yesterday. Oh, man, leading the tournament. Oh, but they're good ones. They're good ones. 4 good fish going on up. 13 point. Come on, get on back there. 1 5 pounds. Mark it, ladies and gentlemen. 29.50 pounds. A new leader in the Pro Division, Gary Carrier.
It's in the record books now. Gary Carrier wins his 2nd Tournament of the Year with a 2-day total of 29.5 pounds. Less than a pound behind Carrier on the Lunker Lure Pro-Am scoreboard is Wayne Diffie with 28.75 pounds. First day leader Brian Snowden finishes 3rd with 25.8 pounds, followed by Toby Hartzell and Jimmy Davis. In the rest of the top 10, Jimmy Carnell leads the way in 6th place with 23.6 pounds, followed by Randall Hudson, Eric Holt, Troy Akins, and Greg Baldwin. In the amateur division, Jack Taft wins his first Central Pro-Am title with a 2-day total of 18.85 pounds. Runner-up Gary Barnes is nearly 4 pounds back at 14.95 pounds, with Mike Purse, Charles Baggett, and John Bond rounding out the top 5. In the rest of the top 10, it's tight all the way as David White finishes 6th with 13.05 pounds, followed by Jim K. Wood, Clark Bolding, Steve Enox, and Randy Purcell. Stay tuned for tournament winning tips from Gary Carrier. We'll be right back. More fish, brought to you by Ranger Boats, where they still build them one at a time.
I was going to attempt to fish deep and try to get off the shore and get away from all the willow fishermen, but I tried that and I couldn't get hit out there. So the first morning, about 9 o'clock, I didn't have much going at all. So I went into the willows and caught 2 in a row out of the willows, and that kind of got me off to a good start. And I flipped some more willows in and never got a hit. So I moved out deep again, and then I stopped on one hole and caught 4 fish the first day, about 9:15. So I had my limit by 9:15, and they were all good fish. So I had told my amateur I'm not going to fish anymore today, and I was going to go look at some stuff that I hadn't fished in 5 or 6 years and save all my stuff for tomorrow. I fished deep again this morning and couldn't get hit, and I had that one little patch of willows, so I went back to them and I flipped out a real good fish out of about a 3.5 pounder, and I went down a little bit further and caught one more. And so I knew I needed 3 more bites because there's a lot of good fishermen in this field, and I knew if I didn't have a limit I probably wasn't going to win. So that's when I put my crankbait on and started throwing my crankbait for the last 5 hours, and I only got 2 bites, but it was typical crankbait. They were good bites, and one was over 4 pounds, and I caught those on the Pradco fat-free shad. I choose this bait. It has a narrow bill at the start and then wide at the end, and I think it digs and dives a little faster and deeper. So when the bait is diving, it'll turn down and come through the water, and when it hits structure or rocks or whatever, it's going to hit it, and then if you let up with your glass rod, it's going to rise the bait above the brush. And then when you start digging about again, it'll start digging back down, so you never have your hooks in the brush. And that's why I like these type of baits. If you get any flatter bill or narrow bill, they'll run more straight horizontal, and the hooks are in the brush.
You know, we all have a lure we turn to when we need to catch fish. And for Gary Carrier, it's the shad-colored fat-free shad. He's now won 2 Central Pro-Am events, and this has been his difference maker both times. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on the Fishin' Magazine television series.
The Fishin' Magazine television series is brought to you by Ranger Boats, where they still build them one at a time so you can fish hard